Well, hello, one and all. This is Bigfoot Michigan Rob. How is everybody? It's Wednesday. It's Wednesday. It's Friday. Yay. I have my days all mixed up. Being under the weather and all, and I decided, since it is the holidays, to do a special impromptu live show. I've got 3 Dogman Encounters for you guys to share. Kind of doing this because next Tuesday, when I normally go live with Krista on Beyond BMR, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, Tuesdays. Well, that's Christmas Eve next week. And, excuse me, you guys have to remember, I still have a messed up throat, but I'm going on. So yeah, I'm not going to be on Christmas Eve. So, I said, Rob, I got some cool stories, and I decided to do something, a Dogman special here for everybody. And these encounters are from my book 2, Bigfoot Michigan Rob Presents, True Cryptid Encounters, book 2. Thank you for everybody that's bought it, or both books. I have books 1 and 2. And so I decided to do 3 stories for those of you that, can't buy the book or whatever. I just decided to share some of these for you guys. Just type Bigfoot Michigan Rob in your Amazon browser. And for those that have bought it, once again, thank you ever so much. Just leave a review after your purchase. That does help promote sales. So yeah, so I decided to do that for everybody. Again, I'll be off next Tuesday. Tomorrow night, though, I'll be on live with the girls with another great late night show. And so, yeah, I decided to do this, and I said, you know what, Rob, let's knock this out. You have the people gather and chat, and all the other people that are listening, so you can have something to have for this weekend. And before I get on, really briefly, y'all know we're having the Crossing Realms Conference taking place September 19th and 20th. That's a UFO, paranormal, and cryptid event at the Eagleton Civic Center in Richmond, Missouri. The whole gang will be there. BMR text Krista, Brandy, Donnie Cho, Monica Rollins, Jason McLean. Everybody from our channels will be there, as well as we have a great lineup. We also are doing a ghost hunt on Saturday. Only 4 tickets remain for the ghost hunt, you guys. And here's our lineup in September. Josh Hurd, paranormal guy. He's a filmmaker and author, lecturer. Heather Mosier, Small Town Monsters producer. Frankie and Dan from Haunted Garage. They'll be there. They're also bringing a haunted car for us to check out. The master of ceremonies, of course, is Tex Wesson. Y'all know Tex. Other great speakers, Greg Ogles, filmmaker, researcher. William Lunsford, awesome guy. I love William. I've known him for many years now out in Arkansas, talking about his fabulous experiences. He'll be speaking. Ronald Murphy, he was just on last week, the cryptid guru. Lady Ann Celine, author, great gal. Dr. Dean Bertram. Dr. Dean, of course, he's going to be talking about the Shaver Project and some other things he's got going on. Go check him out on Talking Weird. And special guests, there's 2 more that I don't know who they are yet. Dana Stricker will be there as a special guest. Ken Gerhardt, and of course, Brent Thomas will be joining us. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited for meeting all you guys because I love getting together with folks for these conferences. And it's going to be a great time. Go to Eventbrite. I've got the link posted in this profile where you can buy tickets, so on and so forth. They're inexpensively priced out for you guys. And the ghost hunt, only 4 tickets left for the ghost hunt. 4 tickets only. So thank you so much for that. I want to thank each and every single one of you for coming on in. Don't forget, if you like to help out the channel, good old BMR, the super chat's always open. You can also become a BMR pirate. Arr, mateys, join today. Yes, that's right. You get a picture of me wearing a bandana in the chat room. That's what you get. And coming in January, though, I'll be doing some members only drops for just the exclusivity of our great members. And like I say, guys, I'm pretty excited to talk some Dogman. 3 encounters. 2 are from national and state parks here in the United States. And in closing, I'm going to talk about Militant Dogmen being created in the lab. So this would be a pretty cool show. I appreciate all of you for coming in. Hit that like button if you would. Roger Blair, Moon at Noon, Diane Boss, Gemini Moon, Head Trip, Mickey G, Roger Blair, Ozzy Sue, hi Sue, Eloria, hi Eloria, Joanne Hartnett, hi, thank you for coming on in. 86. Scrolling down. Jordan Cogburn, nice to see you, brother. Thanks for coming on in. Scrolling down. We're filling up here. Anybody else? If I miss you, hey, listen, I apologize. Sinfully Wicked, hi, Sin. Good to see you as always. Let's see what else. Well, BJ Lapierre, author and illustrator. So thank you so much for coming on in. I do appreciate it. Again, this is an impromptu show. I normally don't do shows on Friday, live shows. I'm not doing a show next Tuesday. So for those of you coming on in, I just decided to do this because I'll be shutting it down. Tomorrow night, though, I will be on live with the girls, Saturday night at midnight. And so thank you. And I wish you all a very Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and so on. If you're not subscribed to Bigfoot Michigan Rob on YouTube, please do so. Please subscribe to Texas Front Porch, the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast. Donnie Cho Says Stuff. Monica Rollins, Our Paranormal World. Paranormal Paul as well. So thank you. Hi, a little twisted. Again, if I missed you guys, I apologize. I can't see you all when I get on telling a couple of these tales, these true cryptid encounters found in book 2, which again, thank you for your patronage. your support, your super chats, your memberships, and just coming on in and listening and watching, because you drive the show. And without you, I wouldn't have a show. So I'm going to take a drink of water. I've been sick for 3 weeks, you guys. It's almost like I don't know what being normal is, but I'm going to go on with it. And my first one comes from the Shawnee State Forest in Ohio. Again, in the book, and this is a very creepy encounter. Very creepy encounter. Thanks to everybody for coming in. Excuse me again. I apologize. So I got this email that I put in the book, and it starts out with, as I'm reading through this, and I also talked to this guy as well. Screaming and yelling and crying was coming from this man Sam's bedroom. His wife Sally yells out to this guy, "Sam, come quick." So Sam immediately stopped his pool game with his buddy Jeff. His friend Jeff was over on a Saturday night. It's about 9:00, and they're playing pool in the lower part of their cabin home in Scioto, Ohio. The Shawnee National Forest, or State Forest, I should say, serves as a beautiful backdrop to their home. So they're surrounded by this forest in Ohio. They had, from what I recall, a quad level style cabin with their main bedroom located on the first level. And Sally, before he could get to the bedroom, was already running down the hallway screaming that a huge man wearing a wolf's mask was on their veranda. Goes on to say that it was staring at her through the window where their multi-level deck surrounded the home. He approaches the bedroom, and he immediately goes in and pulls out his .357 Magnum, which he had located in the top of his closet in that bedroom. He looks towards the window, but he saw that nothing was there. And he yells back at Sally that all was safe, right? She came back up to the bedroom and began to tell him, Sam, what she had witnessed. So Sally, during this episode, was sitting, I guess, at her vanity in the bedroom. She was applying some makeup and what have you, sitting there. When she noticed, everybody, a wolf-like man with red eyes peering at her on the veranda of the deck, peering at her into the bedroom. At first, she thought it was an intruder in a mask. And she also says that it had some sort of red light in the mask where the eyes were to be, peering in at her. She says it's much too dark to see any clothes on this figure, that the head and the red eyes were just ever so distracting. And Sally becomes especially scared, as in the bedroom leading out to the veranda, they had French glass doors that were wide open, allowing for a breeze to come through into the room. So this is wide open where anybody could enter the bedroom. So she's screaming in fright, but she still had the wherewithal to race towards the French doors to slam them shut. Closes the doors to prevent this intruder's entrance. So you guys, she sees this as she allegedly thinks somebody in a mask tried to invade her home on the veranda, and she runs towards this person at the time, thinking it's a person, slams and locks the French doors to evade this individual from entering, right? And as she's doing this person, it runs towards Sally outside on the deck. And as soon as she got to the doors, this person stops and jumps off the deck and runs on two legs. Then suddenly, it dropped to all fours and sped off, as she says, like a bolt of lightning into the wood line. Sam is listening to Sally retell what she experienced. And Sam, frankly, you guys, he really can't believe what his wife's saying, right? Okay. He thought some of this was an exaggeration. She's in shock. She's scared. Believed the fact that perhaps a person was indeed on the veranda. But he's also wondered why a person lurking on the deck, looking through the bedroom, wearing a wolf's mask. He didn't get that, but he understood his wife's fear. So after calming down, he calms down Sally, his wife. He goes to the veranda himself, and he looks to the deck area where all this took place. Okay. So shockingly, on the deck, he finds a wolf print. He finds a wolf print, everybody. It was covered in mud right in the approximate area where it apparently jumped off the deck. So he sees an imprint of a wolf-like print that leaps from the deck off of the veranda where it allegedly sped off into the woods. He goes out and tells me, hey, Rob, man, the track was clearly visible. He says in this suspect's attempt to leave, the foot stepped into a huge pottery pot. It shattered it. But the dirt stuck to the bottom of the foot, allowing for a very clear, distinctive track. Goes on to explain that this track is like 8 inches long by 4 inches wide and had extruding from its toes. You could make out what appeared to be a set of 3, perhaps 4 long talons or claws. So he gathers this information, again, calming down his wife. Then he goes out with his buddy Jeff, who was over there playing pool. They went outside. It was nighttime. He brought a flashlight. They're looking about. So immediately now outside at ground level, from where the bedroom's deck was, where this alleged person or maybe creature now perhaps jumped, they did discover a set of bipedal wolf-like tracks. Same tracks that were on the veranda. So these tracks, they go on for about 4 or 5 yards, everybody, before the tracks turn quadrupedic. It drops down from a biped, to a quadruped, and it runs off, and you can track this now for another 10 yards or so. He says the things that was really strange is that they disappeared some 25 yards before the tree line. So he followed these tracks all the way out to the tree line. Before hitting the tree line, everybody, they simply vanished. So the next morning, Sally and Sam, they feverishly spent hours on the internet looking up tracks. In the internet search, they put in words like wolf, werewolf, oversized claws. They used just about every word in association in describing what Sally allegedly had seen. And then they come to grips that they pretty much ruled out a human intruder, just primarily, everybody, because of the wife's description and, of course, the wolf-like prints. So now as they continue on the internet, the website is now pulling up in the web search topics such as Dogman, werewolf folklore, images and stories. So Sam and the wife, they begin to read on. And a lot of the things that he found on the website made a lot of sense. Bipedal, dog-like, wolf-like, cryptid. And Sam admits to me that he never heard the term cryptid before. Now, Sam is not into Bigfoot, cryptids, or any of that, right? He found it fascinating. He knew about the alleged myth of Bigfoot, and then he just goes on to discover that the cryptid Dogman fell into this category. He goes on to tell me he doesn't really believe any of this, right? He says he doesn't believe in Dogman, and certainly not in a Dogman. He says his only wish, despite Sally's terror, is that he needed to see it with his own eyes, right? So almost on cue, his phone rings and his buddy Jeff, who was playing pool with him, right? The prior night, the prior day. And then Sam goes, and then Jeff himself, or this friend Jeff now, it was looking up things on the internet as well. He goes, Sam, you're not going to believe what I found online. And Sam replies to his buddy Jeff, Dogman. Jeff paused and he says, yes, that's what I found. So they stopped talking for like a brief moment on the phone. There was a dead silence over the phone. Then they both kind of in unison reported back, let's go find this thing. So everybody, an alleged wolf-like creature on the veranda staring in at the wife, tries to get in. She shuts the doors, locks it out, it jumps off. Then they start doing the research with his buddy Jeff and the wife, and they come up with, of course, Dogman. So moving forward now, Sam and his buddy Jeff set aside a day to go hiking in the Shawnee National Forest, of which where they're surrounded by, where they live. So they're thinking, well, yeah, this is where this creature possibly came from. Jeff, however, and Sam are still very skeptical of this whole entire situation. However, Sam knows that something or someone did visit the house that night. The description that Sally gave the tracks was very intriguing, kind of odd for this part of their location. But the thing that they wonder was how they suddenly vanished, right? This was a mystery to everybody. In this story, Sam goes on to explain, despite living so close to the park, the forest, that nobody had very little camping or hiking experience for that matter. They lived in the wilderness or in the forest, but not hikers. So Jeff read up on the trails. in the Shawnee and decided where would be their first option to enter into the forest. So him and his buddy, they're equipped with a backpack, water, some food, a first aid kit. Jeff brought along a 45 caliber handgun. And of course, Sam, as I mentioned earlier, brought along his 357 Magnum, as I mentioned earlier, from the closet. But for whatever the reason, Jeff forgot and left the gun at home. He only had the gun for protection of his family. And he was really oblivious of the park rules about carrying firearms. So I guess he says he left it at home. Jeff stowed away his gun in the bottom of his backpack and retrieved it about 20 minutes into the hike. After brustling about for roughly 15 minutes, unpacking Jeff's backpack to retrieve the weapon, they continued on. They spent about 8 hours on the trail, taking a rest and taking in, the scenery. These guys are not even sure what to look for, everybody, because they're not cryptid people. They even have their doubts about all this, except for what the wife had mentioned. So now they decide to look for these tracks. They find nothing. In fact, they spent the entire summer taking out their spare time hiking the trail and camping out one weekend for over 3 days, yet they find nothing. Now the summer months, they roll into fall. It was now going on 4 months and still nothing. Sally now even began to question what she saw. She starts now to feel ridiculous, everybody. We've all heard these stories. She felt ridiculous about the whole situation. Sam, being the good husband, told Sally, he assured her that she did see something, but what is again the question? But again, they can't get over the oversized wolf print. What she's seen, the bipedal tracks with the claws that turned into biped. It just scurried along, right? Sam, in the back of his mind, could not shake the feeling that this intruder, or whatever it was not a human being at all. He thinks it's something. But he says the facts just didn't add up. And that tugged at him. He knew that Sally was still disturbed. He had just wished that he had a first-hand glimpse of this, much like his wife did. He goes on to talk about, that adage where not saying, talking about something, or if you see something, it's not exactly what you see. That's what they now, psychology, that's what their mind is interpreting now. Well, the fact that they were now kind of scurrying away from this was nothing ended up turning into something. He goes on to tell me, still to this day does not know what to believe. Goes back and tells me it was mid-September, and he and Sally were in the backyard on the deck, enjoying the foliage, the woods, the nature. I guess it was in September, so the beauty of the fall, the colors start coming out. He goes on to say the sun started to set back into the tree line. They were watching 3 or 4 does prancing about outside of the woods in the meadow. Suddenly, it says, coming crashing into view from the woods was a huge, dark-colored animal running on 2 feet, approaching the doe. He knows immediately this is not an animal because he knows that no animals run on 2 feet at that rate of speed. Sure, a bear can get up and, meander about very awkwardly. We all know about that. Because this thing was fast at 2 feet. Then it now drops to all 4s. And it pounced upon the slowest deer, the deer that was trailing him back. It dropped the deer, and then he says from his vantage point, about 100 yards out, the creature appeared to grab the deer from behind the neck. It now rises to 2 feet on both his feet bipedally and starts to shake the deer back and forth, much like a dog would shake its favorite soccer play toy. Now, he goes on to tell me that, excuse me, guys. Thanks, Joe. I appreciate that, buddy. Joe Two Pops, thanks so much. So now it appears to take the deer under one arm and run back into the forest. Sally, Sam, they look at each other in horror. Was this what Sally saw? She couldn't speak, neither could he. He reaches for his phone now to call his buddy Jeff. Jeff re-enters the picture. Jeff listened, and Jeff thought, that his buddy Sam was making this whole thing up just to make him go back into the woods. You have to remember that Jeff and Sam spent about 6 months investigating these woods. before he finally gave up. He feverishly tells Jeff his story, but Jeff, he got the feeling, was just reluctant in believing him and kind of told him to stop wasting his time. And really briefly, everybody, when you've had an encounter and people don't believe you, maybe once they believe you, but then after trials and tribulation investigating, his friend Jeff says, I'm done with this. So I understand that. Dejectedly, Sam hangs up the phone, consoles his frantic wife once again, and he never got back with his buddy Jeff. Sam goes on to tell me that he never told his story to anybody. He released this to me, and the wife now wants to move. She's telling Sam she wants to move. She's terrified, everybody, that this creature, whatever it is, might return for another visit. They put their beautiful house up for sale. And the dream of having this beautiful house ended. They go on to say that unhappily, they moved out. They moved to the city of Dublin by her mother. And Sally wants nothing to do with the woods ever again. And Sam says, sadly, I must agree with her. I've certainly heard, everybody, about Dogman in this part of Ohio. I mean, can you imagine your wife or being the woman herself in your bedroom? You're putting on your makeup and you look in back of you out on your veranda with your French doors, and you see some wolf-like person. Because again, she thought it was an intruder dressed in a costume with those glaring red eyes approaching. She turns around and she's got the willpower. She's got the strength, and she runs to shut the doors on this person, jumps off, runs on 2 feet, then to 4. Then the friend and Sam go to look, to no avail for 6 months. And then, of course, they see the same creature. Both the husband and wife see it. They know it existed. And killed the deer. That's something else. Hope you like that one. Again, for you just joining, I'm not doing a show Tuesday night, so I decided, it's Friday. I'm going to do a couple Dogman Encounters for you guys. I know my voice is getting scratchy, so please forgive me. This is a story that takes place in the William Penn State Forest in Pennsylvania. The man goes on to tell me his name is Steve, and he says he just had this terrifying encounter, right? He first goes on to tell me about some background information of a tale that was told to him by his now late grandfather, Stanley. Steve goes on to tell me he uses the term tale very loosely. His father's name is Stan Jr. And Stan Jr. kind of told his son the story before the grandfather did. But at the time that the father heard the story, he was only 5 years old. So the dad just remembered fragments of this encounter. Eventually, Grandpa Stanley would fill in his grandson down the road. And here's the encounter here. And we're going to go back with a little history on this. By the way, thanks to everybody for coming on in. I appreciate you guys. Love you all. Give me a thumbs up if you would. It's the holiday season. It's the holidays. It's Christmas, actually. So, again, William State Forest, Pennsylvania, 1967. Grandpa Stanley, who preferred to be called, which is what he preferred to be called, was in his mid-30s. His dad at the time, Stan Jr., was 5 years old, okay, in 1967. The grandfather, thank you, JoJo. Appreciate you so much for the super sticker. Love you. So the grandfather had over 40 acres of property outside of Williams Penn State Forest. That's what it's called today. They had a very spacious cabin in the woods where his dad spent his early youth hunting and fishing with his father, Grandpa Stanley. So the young boy is telling me the story. He says on his 16th birthday, Grandpa Stanley purchased him an older Ford pickup truck. And this 16-year-old kid, everybody, he's excited. He's exuberant. He's gleaning from ear to ear, enjoy, right? So, but the grandfather puts his finger to his lips, okay? And he says, Steve, this is, of course, his grandson, take this truck wherever you want, wherever you like, but never take it to the cabin. Young Steve replies, but why, Grandpa? Keep in mind, everybody, as I mentioned earlier, that Steve's dad kind of told him the story in fragments. It was kind of pieced together. So Grandpa Stanley went on to tell his grandchild what had happened at the cabin in 1967. Grandpa goes on to say, Steve, your father and I, back when your dad was 5, went fishing off of a riverbank that ran across the property. It was early morning and not a fish to be caught, not even a nibble. Grandpa recalled that there was not even a sound to be heard in the forest that morning, which was like very strange. Grandpa felt something was not quite right. So he told his dad, Steve's dad, let's pull in our gear and head back to the cabin. Before they could reel in their rods, they're fishing, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that. All of a sudden, Grandpa and the dad were surrounded by a pack of wolves. These wolves, Grandpa Stanley goes on to explain, were not ordinary wolves. They were huge, black. He had the deepest red eyes. And they glared at the grandfather and his son, Stanley Jr. They were on all fours, seemed to be at least 4 feet high, with unusually large heads that matched their demonic style red glowing eyes. Grandpa had guessed that there were at least 6 or 7 of these beasts, as he calls them. According to the grandpa, his dad, his son at the time, again, you got to remember, he's a young kid. Back in 1967, he starts to cry. And the dad remembers from the account just the red eyes. So frightened, the grandpa turned to Steve Jr.'s, Steve's dad says, son, be still, don't move. So they're surrounded by this pack of wolves, oversized heads, glowing eyes. Son, do not move. Goes on to say at least 10 minutes went on before the pack of wolves, all of a sudden, for whatever the reason, they turned around and headed back deeper into the forest. They all left, everybody, except for one. This wolf-like creature on all 4 legs, all of a sudden, rises to 2 legs and stared directly into the grandfather's eyes. With those menacing red eyes, it seemed to smile in a perverse manner. The smile was not friendly. It was kind of a statement. Okay. The grandfather sensed the smile was that of this. I mean, by the look, everybody, he got the sense that this creature was telling him that I can kill you whenever I want. The creature then ran on 2 legs before dropping to all 4s and vanished back into the depths of the forest. Again, this, everybody, took place in 1967. The grandfather and his son, and of course now we have the sibling, the grandchild. Now this story fast forwards, everybody, to the summer of 2012. Now the dad is now 50. The son is 24. Grandpa Stanley passed. They received news. In Grandpa's will, the father, his son, received the property out at Williams State Forest. And this is a place, everybody, that has not been visited in well over a decade. Not going back. Just too creepy, too spooky. This place was never liked by anybody in the family. In fact, the grandchild always felt uneasy, as well as his father and his mother, about Grandpa, who's now passed. They always thought him to be odd. Even his own son thought Grandpa was odd and out there. They had no interest in this place. They had no interest in taking over and inheriting this, okay? The son goes on to say that he feels his dad was always scared of the place, especially since the day when they were all surrounded by the wolves. Sorry for my voice, everybody. I don't know when I'm going to get better. I just don't. Anyway, the mother also never felt at ease around Grandpa Stanley. In fact, she flat out did not like her husband's dad. They found him to be untrustworthy. The son goes on to say that his mom and dad often fought about the mother's disdain for her father-in-law, Stanley Jr.'s now deceased dad. But he goes on to tell me, like most married couples, dad always took the mom's side, which always caused tension, especially around the holidays. So they have to get it together, decide what to do with this property. It was an early morning in the fall when the son, the dad, and the mom, they all rode out to their new family inheritance, which they wanted no part of. They were all reluctant, but they wanted to inspect the cabin, spend the weekend, and they wanted to decide if they wanted to keep the property or put it up for sale. The guy goes on to tell me that this property is just magnificent. It's beautiful. 40 acres, prime real estate with running streams, an abundance of wildlife. It was a perfect home for a nature lover, a hunter, or just a place we all just want to get away from the hustle and bustle of the city. Everyday life, right? But they knew that it would fetch a pretty penny on the open market. The first night drew near upon arriving at the cabin. And he goes on to tell me it's where the nightmare starts all over again. It's nighttime. The mom, the dad, the son hear loud, insidious howls ring from the eastern side of the property. The howls grew near and they gained a crescendo, getting more depth, right? More creepiness. Now the three of them are huddled in the cabin where they hear something now running on the outside of the cabin. The footfall was heavy, unlike the footfall of any animal. Whatever this was, everybody, it was big. It was big. His dad rose, Stanley Jr., rose to look out. He looks out the living room window, I believe it was. And you know what he sees? Those glowing red eyes, not 50 feet from the cabin. Those glowing red eyes that he remembers in 1967 as a 5-year-old kid. There it stood, a werewolf-looking creature, at least 7 feet tall, big black head, and those peering eyes. He goes on to tell me, Rob, it's almost like it peered into my very soul. Then, like before, it drops on all fours and started to run to the house. They lost sight of this creature. Okay. When all of a sudden, on the opposite side of the living room, I guess you would call it the family room, I don't know, scratching sounds like thick nails begin to scrape along the side of the house. Everybody runs to the window. What they see at first, they thought it would be, the same creature, right? Suddenly, back in the living room area side of the cabin, the scraping and clawing started up on the other side. So now they're scraping on opposite sides of this family room area. Okay. This entire family, they're frantic. The mom starts crying. The dad, pale as a ghost. And of course, the kid, he's in shock. In a strange way, everybody thinks he's kind of dreaming, right? But he knows he's not dreaming. He knows that this is very real, not a dream. This went on, everybody, all night long until just before sunrise. So can you guys imagine scraping on the outside of your house? You see this werewolf-looking creature. It's not going anywhere. It's howling, ominous sounds. The family's terrified, won't go away. It goes on for hours into the night. He goes on to say the night was paralyzing. But they waited it out. When they thought, or perhaps that these wolves, these werewolves, dogmen, whatever, were gone, they went outside and inspected the outside of the home. Deep grooves and gouges and claw marks were left all about the outside of the cabin. Their reality set in. Now they all know, everybody, this was all too real. They're not dreaming. Referring back to the old grandfather that gave these crazy tales now comes to fruition. They see it physically. They see the physical evidence scraped along the outside of this cabin. The mom, who hated the grandfather, says to the dad, all along, she could not help but think that old Grandpa Stanley somehow had something to do with this. So the dad, of course, his wife speaking ill of his past father, he kind of loses it, says some, bad things to the mom, according to the son. They got in a fight and they argued. And now the son, who's now a grown man, 26 years old, starts to cry and tells his mom and dad to please stop. Mom, Dad, Grandpa's dead. He's not here. Please stop talking ill of Grandpa. Grandpa's not evil. He's not this or that or the other. Goes on to tell his dad not to stop blaming Mom for not liking Grandpa. Because let's face it, they all thought he was creepy and very strange. The mom and dad, they pull it together. They laugh at their son. They give him a hug. Yeah, finally. They calm down. They pull it together. Now they go about doing a final walk about the cabin. Well, they come up along the backside of the house on the outer porch, I guess it was, right? They took note of the same gouging and claw marks on the floorboards. However, unlike the random scrapes and gouges, there appeared to be something etched in the wood. So, everybody, really quickly, there's claw marks, gouges, and scrapes, all lineal, up and down, all around. Then all of a sudden, not claw marks per se, but something etched in the wood was a message. A message, everybody. And it goes on to say, "Get out, Grandpa." Okay. Grandpa, 1967. Him and his son come across some sort of a pack of huge wolves. Told the creepy stories. This goes on and on. Dad, the mom does not like the grandfather. The dad just thought his dad was kind of nuts. What, 30 years go by, 20 years go by, inherit this place, Grandpa's place, who's now passed on. Nobody could trust grandfather. They come across this encounter with this werewolf-like creature. Terrorizes them through the night. Gouges at the house, along the sides, the wood, whatever. And then it leaves a message. But there's whether it leaves the message or not, "Get out, Grandpa," and carved in the wood. When I look back and think about that, what y'all think about that? Was Grandpa actually a werewolf? Did he sketch that? Did he scratch that into the wood, into the house? Because he was fearful that maybe he would do something that he would regret, but now deceased grandfather? Or maybe grandfather was a shapeshifter? I can't see a grandpa, tormenting the family. But as I said earlier, nobody really trusted old Stanley Sr. I don't know. I thought that was extremely interesting. Hope you guys like that. It's creepy. I got one more for you about a Militant Dogman. But before I do that, don't go anywhere because I have to get a drink of water. As you can tell, my voice is crackling. I'll be back in like 40 seconds. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on in. Give me a like while I'm gone. I'll be back in about 30 seconds. My throat is ripped apart here. BMR. Sorry about that. I should have been better prepared. I should have had some water before I started this. Good old BMR still under the weather. I've had this for 3 weeks. My voice, as a lot of you guys who watch the shows, it starts to give way, you guys. And I don't know if I'll be good for Christmas Eve or not, but I want to thank everybody for coming in. I really do appreciate that. I want to thank Joe and JoJo for your awesome super stickers. Of course, that's available. You can become a pirate, whatever you want to do. It's Christmas time. This is an impromptu show. If you're just tuning on in, and these are Dogman Encounters from Bigfoot Michigan Rob Presents True Cryptid Encounters, Book 2, found on Amazon. So thanks for coming in. Merry Christmas to all. I appreciate you guys. Give me a thumbs up. Give me a like. The final story I got for you guys is an email I got from this guy, John. Okay. And I will tell you this. BMR, do believe that we create humanoids in the forest. I believe they're released into our national forests. I believe that sincerely. And when I came across this, it kind of had me thinking. And thanks, Simply, for that. I really can't read chat doing this by myself. I don't have a backup plan. Hello to everybody for coming in. I love and appreciate all of you. If I didn't say hi, don't mean I don't love you. But getting back on with it about this Militant Dogman, I got this from a guy named John. And he goes on to tell me about he had an incredibly terrifying account of what he did off grid for a contracted company for the government. He goes on to say that his work did not last very long. He goes on to say, as I will soon find out, right? But what he says he can't say is this. He tells me that we do create militant creatures for a variety of purposes. And he says in his mind, it's mostly nefarious with deadly ramifications. And they always are soon to follow. He believes that the government creates these as weapons, weaponizing these things. This guy goes on to tell me that he first started his career getting degrees in molecular science and some DNA studies. Upon that, he joined the Army and worked for 20 years in exploratory research, whatever that is for the Army, right? Of course, like most military people, we see it every day, even on today's news. You can't give the exact name of the department, as is, of course, classified. Just like we read these UFO hearings, everything is classified, you guys, right? He went on to say that he can tell me this, that the last 5 years of his career, he was stationed at a dumb, deep underground military base. Again, not giving up the location. It was in the desert in the United States. By the way, if you are new here, please subscribe to Bigfoot Michigan Rob on YouTube. I'm getting close to 5,000 subscribers. My goal was to reach it by Christmas. Well, I ain't going to get there. I'm about 80 shy. Yeah, so it is what it is. But thanks for coming in if you're new. And thank you for all my followers over the last several years. I, again, of course, appreciate you guys. He goes on to tell me for this email, he's going to focus on what he did for the 5 years in the deep underground military base. It was contracted with military. He goes on to say that the lab was set up in layers. In his department, he worked with manipulation of molecular cells and gene splicing. He was given an assignment. An allotment of data points were set up, which he had to utilize for his research and his studies. Upon the completion of his work, he was now sent off to another layer in the department. So this man was working layers and layers throughout this base. Once his project was completed, it went to the next level or a next step. He even mentions that it reminds him kind of the story of Bob Lazar. For those of you into ufology, you all know who Bob Lazar is, right? Where he worked in Area 51. So he says his work was kind of similar to that. Again, he did this for 5 years. And then he started to wonder and ask questions about what was going on. What was he actually doing with the gene splicing? Of course, that's kept a secret, right? Just do your job. Don't ask questions. We paid you a lot of money. Keep your mouth shut. Do your job. Again, it gets to the point where, again, the senior officials told him to stop asking questions. Then out of the blue, he was forced to retire. They put an end to his work, gave him a full pension, reminded him that all of his work was top secret. And he goes on to say that he received more than a generous amount of hush money for his silence. Goes on to say it was enough money where, on top of his pension, he could easily forget, not tell anybody, because he was so well paid. Okay. So, about 3 years after his retirement for the previous 5 years, he was now contacted by an undisclosed party that wanted to meet with him and talk about a very important assignment that had to do with the protection of national security. Okay. So, quick summarization 5 years in the dumb. They forced him into retirement, pay him a lot of money. 3 years go by. Now he gets contacted again by another agency. At first, he thought it was a test by the military in an effort to see if he was going to disclose his work. So he right away, everybody thinks he's being set up to see if this guy's actually keeping his mouth closed, paid him all this money. So he thought he was being tested. They want to have a meeting. He puts him off. Then finally, after several more phone calls and harassing him, he agrees to have this meeting. He goes to say that he was picked up at his home, taken to another military airbase, where he met up with some officials that he actually were familiar to him, that he worked closely with during his time working in the DUMBs, deep underground military bases. He goes on to say, "Are you testing me? Do you want me just to break? What do you want to do here?" He thought he was getting set up, so he flat told these people. These officials assured him this was not a test. They said that he came highly recommended by the government and that they were contractors for this other company. He's still very apprehensive. He felt somewhat assured, and he boards this plane with this group of people. And again, he goes on to say the location is not to be discussed on the platform, this, that, and the other. But you know what he says, which I found to be very intriguing, everybody, that this location, again, is in the middle of the desert below ground. Not sure if it's the same place he was at the prior 5 years, but it's all coming together like he's thinking it's the same thing. When he gets to this facility, however, he finds this facility is much bigger than he had expected. Okay. He goes on to tell me that what he witnesses here is both terrifying and fascinating all at the same time. As he's walking through this establishment, this base, this facility, he notices there were a multitude of tanks, and they're all filled with the form of a liquid base. They were lined up, and inside of these tanks, everybody, is filled with mutations of humanoid figures that did not seem to be natural at all. As the emailer goes on to tell me, he says, being a scientist, he was immediately filled with emotions and adrenaline. And then he goes on to say that his fears, for whatever the reason, they were quickly subsided. Several hours go by of discussion and walking this plant. He finally asks these guys after several hours, what's his role? What's he supposed to do, right? And they told him. They went on to say, goes on to say that many of these mutations, okay, had been released in remote sections of the United States. So these tanks filled with these humanoid looking creatures in this liquidy tank were released in our country, in our forests. Okay. He goes on to tell this guy that these creatures were designed to decrease the amount of deer and other animals that seem to overpopulate the designated areas. Okay, you guys, I'm going to stop right there. Do you buy that? The government, again, you pay this guy handsomely, want to decrease the population of the deer. Well, if I'm this guy, I know they're full of crap. The DNR takes care of that, as we all know today, in certain areas, right? I mean, come on. He says again, being a scientist, he immediately asks this guy, why interrupt the balance or the process of natural selection? Right? Why are we even doing this? He goes on to say that Mother Nature is not one to be manipulated with. Everything in the wild has its own process, right, everybody? It shapes the wilderness we have today. Regarding its population, predators eat the weak. Thanks again, JoJo, for the awesome super sticker. They breed, they eat, they interact. The ecosystem should not be messed with. And this person's saying all this. Human beings do not have to control the environment. Predators eat the weak, so on and so forth. So he's getting confused. So he finally asks, what is the real reasoning behind my visit? Finally, he's finally getting some answers now. He's been in this place for hours, getting the runaround. What am I doing here? He's just showing me all this creepy stuff, right? Finally, a man comes out who had said nothing. He was in the background just listening on him. And he says, John, by the way, this guy's name's John. I don't know if I mentioned that. It just popped in my head. I will be frank with you. These creatures have gotten out of control and human beings have gone missing. Let me repeat that. John, I'll be frank with you. These creatures have gotten out of control and humans have gone missing. I know everybody listening today in the chat room and listening later know about the 411. That's what I'm thinking, right? I do believe the 411. We're our government's responsible for a lot of this. A lot of humans have gone missing. They've been killed. Says that these animals, these creatures that they created and released, have been savagely killing in higher numbers human beings, the other animals of the forest. Which even makes this even more weird is they have been experimenting now with a form of mind control where these creations, they're trying to track them and control their habits. So now they're implementing some sort of design to control the creatures they created. They go on to say the eventual goal was just to be able to control the population. Blah, blah, blah. This representative says, hey, listen, I'll be honest with you. The first part of what we told you is fact. That was our objective. It just went south. It just went south. Reluctantly, this guy now, he knows he's getting smoke blown up his ass. You got to remember, he's a scientist. He works with gene splicing and DNA splicing and all of these other things. They offer him a job. After hearing all this, of which 90% is BS, he goes on and tells me he signs a 90-day contract and went to work with them a week later. Okay, of course, he goes on to say he can't go into the details of the 90 days of work. Again, we've all heard this before. Goes on to say, what I can tell you is this. After 2 weeks of his work, and to help create now a form of mind control and at the same time enhance these bioengineered creatures. He begins to realize now that this is not at all about controlling the forest or the population. And I knew that, quite frankly, because most of you have way into the story. Goes on to say he believes this to be a militant operation to create the fighting machines. The stories of Militant Dogman do exist, he says to me. He has seen these firsthand in the labs. 7 to 8 feet humanoids that look like massive wolves and they're bipedal. He goes on to say he'd never seen them roam free. The ones that he saw were in these tanks in a controlled environment in a docile form. He goes on to say that these creatures are so huge and humongous, he would never want to see any of these creatures out of the tank. He goes on to tell me, as a scientist, not a religious guy, not a believer in God, but he said he actually prayed for the first time in his life that these beasts are never to be released. He prayed that they're not responsible for the taking of human life under the control, the guise of our government. He goes on to tell the individuals finally that he cannot participate. He wants no role. anymore. They hemmed, they hawed, and once again, like the very first time, paid him a generous bonus. But today, he wonders if he's truly safe. Well, there you have it. I tell you what, those of you that know me and have been following me, I do believe that this goes on in our government. There are things they certainly don't share. There's no disclosure. I think a part of the 411, I think this has a lot to do with it. You can't blame it on one thing. There's 10 different things we can talk about regarding the missing. But our government don't really care really about us, right? They're creating weapons, humanoid weapons. Who knows what else they're creating? It's fascinating, everybody. It's food for thought. I mean, it's scary, isn't it? It's scary. I did this today because I'm out doing a show Tuesday night, and I said, I got these 3 pretty amazing cryptid accounts to share with you guys. I hope you enjoyed them. I really do. I enjoyed it. I love doing this. I'm sorry. I apologize again for my voice. I don't know when my voice is gonna get better, you guys. I was told to put tablespoons of honey and just swallow honey and lubricate the throat. I don't know. I think I'm getting better. I mean, I'm not sick. It's just I can't talk. But I do appreciate each and every single one of you for coming on in. If you're new here, please subscribe to Bigfoot Michigan Rob on YouTube. Please, everybody on your way out, give me a like. This book 2, you can find on Amazon. The link's posted here. Please like, please share, please subscribe. And of course, I also got to thank Joe, Jojo, and Jojo again for your awesome super chats. It's amazing. I appreciate all you guys. I do this for you guys. You guys drive the show, and everybody listening later, and everybody not in chat, I appreciate you as well. Hello to everybody that I missed, and I appreciate y'all. And I got to tell you, my voice is getting hoarse. I'm going to be back, though, Saturday night at midnight with the girls for another late night at midnight Saturday. I'm off Tuesday. If I don't see you guys Saturday night, have a very Merry Christmas. Love it. Love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Subscribe if you haven't. I need 5,000 by Christmas Day. I ain't going to get it. I'm a realist. I'm about 80 away. Have a fascinating, great weekend and a great Christmas. And as you know, I just got to find that old extra button. Love y'all. Have a great night. I am, of course, BMR.